You have found yourself on another episode of Locked On Bulls. On today's episode, I'm going to be breaking down the Bulls signing Javonte Green to a contract for the rest of the season and waiving Terry Taylor and how that could help the team in their play-in run. We're also going to talk about Billy Donovan's comments on the state of the team right now, which were kind of eye-popping, at least for me. And unfortunately, Lavar Ball is back talking once again. We're going to get to all that and more on today's Locked On Bulls.
You are Locked On Bulls, your daily podcast on the Chicago Bulls, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Locked On Bulls, member of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every single day. I'm Haize, host and creator of Chicago Bulls Central and Chicago Bears Central YouTube pages and podcasts. We're going to go ahead and jump into it today. And so the Chicago Bulls made the decision to go ahead and sign Javonte Green for the remainder of the season. Javonte, who had played 3 games for the Chicago Bulls on a 10-day contract. He was eligible to sign another 10-day contract as the Bulls still had that provision that allowed them an extra roster spot with Julian Phillips still being out with injury. But the Bulls decide, why sign him to another 10-day contract? Let's go ahead and lock him back up for the remainder of the season. They also waived Terry Taylor in this case. And, it just comes down to, I think, something very simple. Terry Taylor is a player that did not play very much for the Chicago Bulls, and Javonte Green is a player that their team's familiar with him. He's familiar with the team. He already has chemistry with a lot of these teammates, and he's a player that Billy Donovan trusts playing. And it just comes down to that. Now, bringing Javonte Green back is going to have some repercussions with some of the younger players on the roster, which I'll talk about here in a second. But, just to talk about Javonte Green, and again, this is an extremely small sample size. It's only 3 games played, 51 minutes played on top of that. But with Javonte Green on the court, the Chicago Bulls have a plus 24 offensive rating than when he's off the court, which is huge. Defensive, as far as that the rating, it goes up another large amount as well. The Bulls have a defensive rating right now of Javonte Green when he's on the court of right around 88, the sub 90, which is really good. Keep in mind, defensive rating with the lower number, not the higher number on top of that. So with the offensive rating being better, right, with the defensive plus 24 offensive rating, that's crazy. Now, I don't expect those numbers by any stretch of the imagination to keep going, right? But Javonte Green does have an impact, especially on the Chicago Bulls defense. Steal rate goes up 6.2% with Javonte Green on the court. Block rate goes up 9.1% with Javonte Green on the court, right? For turnovers forced goes up with every basically measurable statistic that the Chicago Bulls have gets better with Javonte Green on the court. Now, that just comes via the type of player that Javonte Green is. He's an active player. He gets in passing lanes. We know that at points like last season when he was healthy, him and Alex Caruso were leading the leagues in deflections, right? Caruso leads the league right now in deflections again this season. Now, while Javonte, I think the question around him has always been his health. He seems to be healthy right now, ready to go. And with the Bulls having 6 games left on their season, with the play-in coming up, Javonte Green is going to be a player that can help them. And I think it just comes down to that. Javonte Green can help the Chicago Bulls on the court. And Terry Taylor is a player that hasn't really played a whole hell of a lot for the Bulls. So, just the simplicity of that, not to kind of overthink it or overmake it something. Javonte Green plays, Terry Taylor doesn't. And so that's where the Bulls made their decision. It does not put them in the luxury tax or anything like that. And it brings a player that's athletic and can have some fun. Also a player that can get out in transition. We talk a lot about how this Bulls roster does like to play quicker when they have opportunities. Javonte Green not only helps create more opportunities where the team can play faster naturally by rebounds, steals, things like that, but he's also another player that can get out there and run with the young guys. So, it's really good, bringing Javonte Green back when you compare it to Terry Taylor. Now, what's something that this does when I said earlier that it kind of negatively impacts a while, and it depends on how you look at it, right? This Bulls team, in signing Javonte Green, this is another win-now move. And again, it's a win-now move with 6 games left on the season, so I'm not trying to overstate it much more than what it is. But this does probably mean that players like Onuralp Bitim is not going to be playing a whole heck of a lot, who's basically fallen out of Billy Donovan's rotation after being in it early. Could impact even if Julian Phillips now does come back by the play-in, and we'll see what happens with that. But he's probably not going to get on the court before Javonte Green. Could it cut into like a Dalen Terry's minutes? I think Dalen and Javonte can play together for the most part, but there's a chance that happens as well again. So it's kind of a yet another situation and scenario where the Bulls are going to prioritize winning now, even though the winning now is the play-in, right? But that's just how the cookie crumbles, right? The Chicago Bulls, who earlier yesterday were tied for the Atlanta Hawks. The Hawks end up losing today to the Dallas Mavericks, which now puts the Bulls back a half-game lead above the Hawks for that 9th seed. But the Bulls are looking at that too, and I guess trying to make sure that they put themselves in a position to win. And that's just what it comes down to. The Bulls, with this last move of the season, made another win now move, and it comes with maybe our younger players just not playing very much over the last and final 6 games of the season, which, like I said, it's a thing. It could hurt some. It could not hurt some. We'll see what ends up coming down to it. But, hey, I mean, if you didn't want your spot taken, I guess you could take the mindset as well. You should have played better. So, that's just what it is. And the Bulls are looking to, hold on to that 9th seed. As everything is shaping up right now, it's the Bulls and the Hawks are destined to play each other in the play-in tournament. Statistically, they still can move up. One of those teams can move up to the 8th seed. It just isn't very likely. And so it's the question now, who's going to be the 9th seed? Who's going to be the 10th seed? And the Bulls with this move are trying to lock in and hold on to that 9th seed and get a home court game in the play-in tournament. And so, got to take that for what it is. And, ultimately, Billy Donovan does trust Javonte Green. He is a player that is going to play for that team, and he fits in. And it's no mistake about it. We saw a lineup before with Javonte, Caruso, Andre Drummond on the court that in a game had like a 66 defensive rating for, I think they played like 14 or so minutes together. So that's something that it can be an advantage for the Bulls, and especially when you look at how the Chicago Bulls have difficulty guarding the three-point line. They're the worst team at guarding the corner threes, right? And some of that comes via the defense. And so to have another disruptive defender out there that is solid enough in the pick-and-roll defense as well, where the Bulls really struggle at, Javonte Green checks all those boxes. And so it's a move that was predictable. I think me and Pat both predicted that Javonte Green was going to be here. I think it's something that, I don't think Javonte Green would have signed with the Golden State Warriors or not been on the Bulls had he been healthy this offseason anyway. I think that the Bulls would have worked out a deal. This is a precursor now to, having Javonte in your building. He's going to finish the season a Chicago Bull. And for an offseason, we're heading into where there's not a whole lot of clarity on what the Chicago Bulls are going to do this offseason. They're right up against the luxury tax, and that lack of clarity could, cause the Bulls to need some cost-effective contract signed and things like that. So, you're looking at that and making a big decision going forward into your future as well on what does this roster look like. And I don't want to put anybody in a position of being fearful or anything, but I do think that there is, as much as we don't like to admit it, there's absolutely a chance that the Chicago Bulls find a way to just run it back next season. Now, they're really right up against that luxury tax, especially if they re-sign Patrick Williams and sign DeMar DeRozan. And so the Bulls could be looking and surveying, hey, what other cost-effective measures can we take? We got a first-round draft pick coming in this season as well. That may very well be the only change we see to this roster next season, is seeing a first-round pick come in here and the Bulls run it back, find a way to sign DeMar and Patrick Williams, Javonte Green, Andre Drummond. At that point, it may be difficult to bring Drummond back, but if you draft a big with the first-round pick, maybe you can, and got Adama as well, Adama Sanogo down in the G League, so maybe that could be some things that the Bulls are looking at. But I would not be surprised, and I don't want anybody to be shocked if me and Pat this summer end up talking about the Chicago Bulls running it back for yet another year. That's going to be a dangerous prospect to give to it. But with that said, man, next up, we're going to be talking about Billy Donovan and his recent comments to Joe Cowley with the Chicago Sun-Times, and basically saying that the Bulls have not really had discussions yet on what the future of the team is going to look like with the roster decisions that are pending this upcoming season. But before we get into that, I want to talk to you guys about a message from a couple of our sponsors. The first one is Amazon Fire TV. Fire TV is your destination for sports, from live games to highlights to in-depth analysis. Fire TV offers amazing viewing experiences with your smart TVs, as well as the Fire Stick TV that you can plug into your existing TV that provides access to millions of movies and TV episodes as well for free and live TV. Whether it's the opening weekend of baseball or college basketball tournament, you're going to want to have a Fire TV. Fire TV's recently created Fire TV channels to deliver a constant supply of the latest videos from your favorite sports brands, all for free. This includes All of Us is Locked On and most of the big pro leagues and college conferences as well. Fire TV channels let you dive into all the game analysis, highlights, and more to keep up to date on all the latest world of sports, March Madness, NBA, MLB, and lots more. Not to mention great news, entertainment, gaming, travel, cooking videos as well. Check out Fire TV channels on Fire TV and Alexa devices. If you haven't checked out Fire TV channels, you should. Trust me on this. Learn more. Visit Amazon.com/LockedOnFireTV. With that said, I also have to bring you guys a message from another one of our sponsors, and that is FanDuel. The sports calendar is loaded, with FanDuel is making it even more exciting to get in on the action, because right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 you can use to bet on the tourney, MLB, NBA, NHL, and more. As a matter of fact, if you look at the Bulls in their next upcoming game, they are favored in their next game. And maybe you guys want to take the risk on betting on the Chicago Bulls. I personally, you guys know I don't really like betting, especially when the Bulls are taking on the New York Knicks tonight at 8 p.m. But hey, it's the Knicks who, have now lost Julius Randle for the rest of the season. Maybe there's something to be said with that, but we'll take a look at that and be breaking that down after the game tomorrow. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn and make your first bet a big win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. All right, Bulls fans. So Billy Donovan was interviewed by Joe Cowley of the Chicago Sun-Times, and a lot of us have all been asking, wondering, hoping that this season could bring some clarity, right? Some clarity to the roster, some clarity to the direction. Me and Pat have talked about it as just bring a clarity to the style of play, right? This is a Bulls team that doesn't have an identity, hasn't had an identity really since they came together, other than mediocrity and struggle. That has been mainly our identity since this version of the Chicago Bulls team came together. And it hasn't been good, right? And so, it's interesting. Joe Cowley had asked Billy Donovan about the offseason directions coming and the direction of the team, and Billy Donovan said this: "I've not had any discussions about that, but I think our guys have done a really good job in what's been thrown at them and what we've had to overcome. I believe in my heart that there's enough in the locker room to find ways to get wins and results. The part of the expectations of competing, you're supposed to do that. It's all of our jobs, right? But I think we can get results. But the reality is there's $70 million that's not playing. That's just a reality." And I'm not going to lie, I've read that. And, again, Billy Donovan, for all his faults on the basketball court, coaching on the sidelines at times that me and Pat like to talk about that irritate us as basketball fans, irritate a lot of Chicago Bulls fans, Billy Donovan usually shoots straight in these interviews. If you go look at some of his postseason interviews, he's always the one that kind of brings the most clarity and on injuries to players, the most realistic timelines, really talks about what exactly is going on with those players. And, to say that they have not had that discussion, right? That's another thing. You may want to focus on what this season is, even with all the up and downness of this season. You may want to very well focus on that. And there's something freeing in that and just going out and playing basketball. But for Billy Donovan to say, we believe that there's enough in this locker room and that there's $70 million on the sideline that's not playing. And that's true. You look at Zach LaVine, you look at Patrick Williams, you look at Lonzo Ball. The Lonzo Ball part of it specifically is Lonzo's been out of basketball for almost 3 years. And it's up to you as a front office to still build something. When a player's been out that long, you can't bet on them to return. the Zach LaVine and Patrick Williams things are, of course, things that the Bulls didn't expect coming into the season. They didn't expect DeMar DeRozan, Nikola Vucevic, Zach to start off the season shooting career lows. The Bulls didn't expect to start off the season 4-15, right? Which has really hurt their overall record. The Bulls team could be fighting realistically for a 7th or 6th seed had they had a stronger start to the season. But at the same time, this is still a roster that we knew was very flawed, right? We know that this roster can't withstand a injury to our bigs. Couldn't really withstand the injury to our power forward situation. That's why you see Alex Caruso, as great as he is, being out there as a power forward right now, because Patrick Williams and Torrey Craig went down at some point, and Alex Caruso is just better with what the team is trying to do. There's a lot of talent in this Bulls locker room. I want to make no mistake about that. But having talent and how that talent fits together as well is something that's extremely important. And that's the part that it seems like AK, after trying to build something with Vooch, DeMar, Alonzo, adding that to Zach, hoping that those things were going to fit together, we've kept trying to make a roster fit that has showed us that they have some very serious flaws. One of those being the defense. We talked about in that first segment how the Bulls are the worst team at guarding the three-point line basically in the NBA. And some of that comes via how you have to play defense, which is having, Vooch, who's not any real threat to protect the rim, really. He can only play in one specific coverage, that's drop coverage. You have another player in DeMar DeRozan who's terrible at pick and roll defense. And so because of that, to kind of protect the paint as the Bulls have tried to do, it's given up that corner three to a lot of teams. And this is the modern NBA. You give that corner three up, teams are going to take it. And a lot of people, even if they're not great three-point shooters, are going to be able to hit it at the rate that the Bulls give up that corner three shot. So I don't want to understate how many players and starters, right? Patrick Williams and Zach LaVine were expected to come into the season as starters, and we're missing those guys. We always knew that this season, really kind of the Bulls increasing where they were last season, which they were a playing team last year as well. But the chances of the Bulls, going past that, it did come to one of the young players making a leap. Luckily, we had two of them do that, in Ayo Dosunmu and Kobe White. Both made big leaps and strides this season. Kobe's coming out of a slump. Hopefully he plays better over the last 6 games. But then you also had Alex Caruso, who's turned himself into a damn good, I wouldn't say volume necessarily, three-point shooter, volume for him per what he's brought to the league before. And so it's in these two worlds. And it kind of goes back to this thing that be prepared for AK to, again, run it back this season. And I think those comments from Billy Donovan, in my opinion, with the way that I take those, say that a lot as well, is that this team seems still stuck on the fact that they believe that there is enough here internally for the Chicago Bulls to find a way to make this work. And that goes back to my personal criticism on this front office, is that it seems like this front office is terrified to take a momentary step back to take a longer step forward. And the tough decisions, the tough conversations that front offices would usually ask themselves based on where the Bulls have been this last 3 years, I just don't know if this front office is ready to ask themselves that question. And that leads us to being in the place where we've been and where it seems like we're going to continue to be, of mediocrity. Now, I hope that my concern over this is proven to not be that serious, that this front office goes into this offseason and realizes, no, they got to make some moves. They got to make some different decisions. I would love to be able to say that that's what comes out of this offseason for the Chicago Bulls. An offseason where you got Zach LaVine, who the Bulls are still reportedly plan on revisiting the trade market for Zach. You got DeMar DeRozan, who, as I've said before, DeMar DeRozan has played to where he earned another contract. But that doesn't mean that the Bulls, it's right for the Bulls to give him that. Again, it depends on the number, it depends on the money. But this team, this front office, this version of who's running the Chicago Bulls seems extremely content and set on staying where we are. Keep giving this same roster opportunity. And maybe you're looking at another year where you have Kobe, you have Ayo. They build off their seasons from this season. Maybe you get Pat, you get Julian Phillips, you get a Dalen Terry, one of those guys to make another leap to add to that. And then maybe we are talking about that. Maybe the Bulls draft a player that does make an impact for the Bulls in their rookie season next year to add some more of that clarity. But right now, the clarity that seems to be needed for the Chicago Bulls roster doesn't seem like it's coming, and it doesn't seem like that this front office is ready to make those tough decisions to get that clarity. And where that leaves us as a team, I don't know. But we'll be breaking it down here on Locked On Bulls with me and Pat continue to talk about this team every single day. Next up, though, we're going to be talking about Lavar Ball, who's talking again. You guys know I really don't like when Lavar Ball gets to talking, but we're going to talk a little bit about that. Before we get into that, though, I got to talk to you guys about one of our sponsors, and that is Robinhood. Did you know that even if you have a 401k retirement, you can still have an IRA? Robinhood has the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood is even boosting every single dollar you transfer in from other retirement accounts with a 3% match. That's right, no cap on the 3% match. Robinhood gets you the most for your retirement thanks to the IRA with the 3% match. This offer is good through April 30th. Get started at Robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply, and now for some legal info. Claim as of Q1 of 2024, validated by Radius Global Market Research. Investing involves risk, including loss. Limitations apply to the IRAs and 401ks. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold for 1 year from the date of the first 3% match. Must keep Robinhood IRA for 5 years. That's 3% matching on transfers is subject to specific terms and conditions. Robinhood IRA available to U.S. customers in good standing. Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC, is a registered broker-dealer. And with that said, Bulls fans, let's go and get into the last topic on today's episode, and that is about Lavar Ball, or I should say comments from Lavar Ball, not necessarily about Lavar Ball, because as Stephen A. Smith once said, ain't nobody thinking about you, Lavar. But with that said, Lavar Ball, who's known to talk a lot about his sons, things like that, he brought up that, Lonzo Ball will be giving the Bulls consideration. Lonzo Ball does want to re-sign with the Chicago Bulls at the end of his contract. That would be heading into his contract ends after the 2024-25 season. We all kind of know that 1 year left on Lonzo Ball's contract. But LaVar Ball added this. Lonzo also dreams of playing with his brother LaMelo, and that would override anything if the chance presents itself. Now, we are talking about LaMelo and Lonzo Ball, two players that have been unable to stay healthy for their franchises. They just haven't been. We don't even know if Lonzo Ball is even going to be able to play basketball at a high level again. And so to hear that Lonzo would prioritize returning to the Bulls after the 2024-25 season, yeah, because the Bulls stuck by, you better prioritize staying by the Chicago Bulls if you're able to rehab your career and get back on the court. The Bulls have stood by Lonzo Ball. And Lonzo Ball, even with his comments saying things like, he felt like the Bulls gave him the best built the best team around him and his skill set. Yeah, you're right. But here's the ultimate reality when it comes down to it. And this is something that a lot of Bulls fans still don't want to face. This is something that it seems like Lonzo and LaVar Ball talking about the shoes. I can't remember what shoe company he blamed for being, why his sons can't stay, can't keep their lower extremities healthy. That was a bar. That was a pause, not a bar. That was a little strange. But the thing is that Lonzo, LaMelo, to a lesser degree than Lonzo. But Lonzo has serious questions on if he's even going to be able to get back on the basketball court. And like always, LaVar Ball is talking, and he's just saying a bunch of nothing. I hate it when LaVar Ball talks. I got to give him credit for how he raised his sons. As a father myself, listen, to have two sons that made it to the NBA and another son that still was able to play professional basketball to some degree, you got to give the man credit for that. But just shut up. Just shut up. Just shut up. Let your son get back on the basketball court before you make any other distractions on if he wants to play with LaMelo and all this. You gotta be able to play. And then you gotta not only be able to play, but you gotta be able to show that you can stay on the court. You gotta be able to show that you can impact the team. You gotta be able to show that you can make some type of contribution. And so to have this conversation about LaVar Lonzo wanting to play with LaMelo and that taking prioritization to play with his team. The Charlotte Hornets are looking at it and still they're asking the same questions on, hey, what are we doing here? Stop being a distraction. Stop. Like, I don't know why people keep putting a microphone in Lavar Ball's mouth. I really don't understand it, man. It's one of the craziest things that consistently happens to me. Like, why do you guys still talk to Lavar Ball? I don't understand it. Maybe somebody can educate me on it. Maybe I'm missing something. But to me, when I look and see comments like this from Lavar, it's all fluff. None of it's like, I would love to hear how Lonzo is actually rehabbing and he's focused and he's out to prove points in the 2024-25 season. I'd rather hear that from Lavar Ball than hear about Lonzo wanting to play with LaMelo. Nobody cares right now. Outside some extreme Ball family stands, don't nobody really care right now. Get Lonzo back on the basketball court. Can we do that first before we worry about the rigmarole of him playing with his brother? Can we do that first? You're back on the same crap, Lavar, that nobody cares to hear right now because your sons, guess what? Regardless of whatever it is, if it's you, those ugly ass baller brand shoes, whatever it was, shut up. Let your sons play basketball and let the game speak for themselves. And let's let everything else work itself out. At least that's my opinion. You guys can let me know what you guys think, is always down below. But that's my time for today. Make sure you guys are following the show at Locked On Bulls. You can follow me personally at CEO Haize, at CEO Haize. You can also follow Pat at Pat the Designer. We want to thank you guys for tuning in. Locked On Bulls is free and available on every podcasting app and platform of your choice, as well as YouTube and the Odyssey app. But for Pat the Designer, I'm Haize. This has been Locked On Bulls, and we out here, y'all. Peace.